Okay, so this is the new member application presentation, which some of you or all of you have had experience with before. It does seem to be a little bit of a stumbling block, at least from, when I get the application packets. There's various things at times that need to be fixed. Some of them are take more work to fix. Some of them are like real easy fixes that I can actually do before sending them on. But if it's something that needs to go back to the flotilla commander, I hate to do that, but it does involve a few more days to go through that process. So kind of a reason for the training session, kind of make sure everybody's understands what they need to do, and so we can eliminate some of these errors. So what we'll cover is actually a little bit of the initial before you actually get to the application. Some of the initial contact, some interview points. Might as well discuss that now, as well as doing the actual application, and then some follow-up and next steps. Then we'll talk about some application fine points. The things I've seen more often as an error, and things that are kind of easily missed. So we'll review that. So everybody is a potential auxiliarist, and it isn't just the HR person that does the recruiting. It's anybody in the flotilla. Any member is a recruiter. So anybody you might meet could be that next prospect. So you always want to think about recruiting. Get their name, their phone number, their email, exchange, give yours as well, and try to maintain contact until they say they're actually not interested, and then you don't have to worry about it anymore. Obviously, we want to be enthusiastic, friendly, reliable, helpful, so they feel like, we're engaged in them, and then they might want to be engaged with us. We always want to give quick response to all communications, whether they phone us or email us. Try to get back to them within a day or two at the most. We want to try to make every effort to be available almost any time to help them out. And that includes updating communications in the AAMS system, which some of you attended that. That's the Auxiliary Applicant Management System. As HRs and flotilla commanders, you have access to that system, and you can make those notes in there. I put this next line in here: before any in-person meeting with the recruit, notify your flotilla commander. And that kind of goes along the same lines if you're heading out to do program visitor missions, or you're heading out to the lake to do vessel exams. You're conducting auxiliary business. You need to cover yourself, and that's why you would notify your flotilla commander that you're heading out to go do this job. And the reason is we are covered by the same insurance at the active duty while we are on auxiliary business. So, say you had a car accident, you were injured, you'd be covered. But the main point is you got to have notified your flotilla commander so they knew you were actually on Coast Guard auxiliary business. So remember that you are the potential recruit's first contact. So you got to make a good impression. We should wear the uniform and wear it properly and be properly groomed. That's how we make a good impression. That's what they're going to feel about the auxiliary or the Coast Guard. We can suggest attending other flotilla meetings, and that's not to say that yours isn't the best, but we want to give them a taste of others as well, because it's not really what's in your best interest in your flotilla, it's what's in the best interest of this recruiter or member. We want them to join the auxiliary. If they join your flotilla, that's great. But if they join another one, it's still good because they join the auxiliary. You may have some negative opinions of another flotilla, but it's best that we don't share that. If we start bad mouthing another flotilla, that would be a bad impression for this potential member. And they always look to us to be the mentor and the guide for the auxiliary. You could use the application, page 2, that section, as a guide for your interview. It has a lot of good information and points that we need to cover, such as we're not a yacht club. You know, it talks about, you know, wearing uniform. It talks about dues. It talks about a variety of things. We want to make sure that this information is given to this potential right up front. We want to talk to them about mandatory training requirements, so it comes as no surprise to them later after they join that they actually have to do this online training. We would ask them up front, you know, if they possess a boating safety certificate. If not, we can suggest that they attend a class as part of their application process. Keeping in mind, it's not mandatory that they have a boating safety certificate to complete the application and join. Talk about commitment. I have people that I interview and I talk to, and I get to the point about commitment that I need them to commit to something. You know, the reason they're joining the auxiliary is because apparently they want to do something, and we know it is volunteer, and they can commit to only what they're able to do with the time they have. We know that. But we know, and I'm sure you may have experienced it, you have people that join and you never see them again. So they basically pay dues and do nothing else. Well, that's not the purpose of joining the auxiliary. So it's critical that we talk to that idea of commitment when we're having the interview. We want to give them the information up front that we do reports. We submit our time for the missions that we do, the effort that we put toward the auxiliary, which is valued to the Coast Guard, you know, active duty. So we want them to know that. So they have a good idea of all these kind of requirements, in a sense, that they need to accomplish while being a member. We want to advise them of uniform standards, how we have to maintain a proper uniform, wear it correctly, and be properly groomed. So as we're having this interview, if we're in person with them, obviously they can see that about us. We can talk to them at that time about the ID card that they would get and what they need to accomplish first in order to get the ID card. When getting an application for the new member, we want to make sure that we have the most current version. And the only place to go get that is to the forms warehouse. And you'll see it's on the list as the 7001. It's like the third one down there. This is always going to be the most current version. And I still, actually even this year, received a version from 2008. So I don't know if somebody just Googled it or how they obtained it, but it's critical that we always get the current version. Having the applicant go through and fill out an old version of an application, only then to have it need to be redone, is kind of a waste of time. We don't want them to experience that. We would have the applicant review the new member student study guide and take the new member exam, which obviously is open book, and they can do it online. And you can find this online version under the Human Resources Directorate, new member class, and upcoming slide, see a visual of where that is. The nice thing about it is when they click on to take that exam, they will provide some information, and once they've completed the exam, the results will email right to them. And then they can just forward that email on to the flotilla commander. So you'll have that date and score of the exam for the application. The new member exam could be done on paper, and then you would have to grade it. The answers are also on that website. Just a little longer process, but it can be done that way. Obviously, if they don't pass the exam, it does not mean that they cannot become an auxiliary member. They just need to do it again. Passing score is 80%, so they're up to getting 6 wrong out of 30 questions. So it's really not that difficult if they use this study guide and look for the answers. It is open book, so it should be fairly easy to get through. I don't think I've ever seen anybody that's really not passed it. This is under the H Directorate site, and if you go under the new member class, this is the page that you'll see, and where you can see in the middle there it says new member study guide and new member online exam. Click on either of those 2 links and it'll open up to the information. Some flotillas get initial dues payment up front from the recruit or the prospect. It's not required. We don't have such a thing as an application fee. Some flotillas, I still hear that occasionally, but it really is not a thing. What happens when a new member joins? Shortly thereafter, the flotilla is billed $20 from district for this new member. Some flotillas have chose to ask the new member for that $20 upon getting in. So that then has morphed into the application fee. So it is not necessary. You don't have to collect that up front. We don't do it in my flotilla. It's kind of like a freebie for the new member when they join. And then they will just pay dues regularly whenever the dues come out for the upcoming year. You want to confirm that they have a passport or a passport card. Passport must be signed. I have received a couple copies of the passport with application packets where they were not signed. So I just need to get that done. Or a birth certificate. You would check it, see if it has a raised seal, and then just get a copy of that document. You could, if you want to, some flotillas do this, take a photograph of the prospect upon their meeting with them for a potential ID card in the future. But you could wait on that. It's not necessary to do that at this time. Again, you can advise them to complete a U.S. Coast Guard approved boating safety course when you're talking to them at the interview stage. But again, not needed for the application. Make sure your paperwork is sent to your flotilla commander as soon as possible, because if the form changes, it may not be accepted. I know we went through a period back in 2021. We went from the 0515 form to an 0321, and then within a month, the 0421. And there wasn't notifications that came out on that. It just changed. But we were lucky to get through some of the old forms through a short grace period. So you just want to keep that in mind. I recently had a new member that had all sorts of difficulty getting me his birth certificate. He had to go apply for a new one because he didn't have it on hand. So we went from an application that was signed in September of 2023 until I got the birth certificate in March of this year. So I had him re-sign his application current dating, because stale dating can also be an issue. So you want to keep that in mind. The AUX 10 consent to auxiliary association membership is no longer needed, as fingerprints are no longer needed. So that part of the process has made it easier. Follow up the next steps. Well, you want to keep contact with these potential members at least once a month. I know they're working on getting some paperwork to you. I've had some take forever to get their new member exam done. Update the AAMS screen when you have different contacts with them. And you don't have to update like every day. You know, if you're talking to them like 3 days in a row, you can make one contact note. It's not necessary to make all three. It's just that you need to make these notes at least before the 60-day time frame runs out, because then they will drop out of the system. Unless the recruit says they're not joining, continue contacting for at least 3 months. Some people don't respond to their emails or phone calls, so it might take a while for them to get back to you. Which, in some of those cases, you wonder what's their motivation. If they're having trouble getting their application done in a timely manner, maybe they're not really going to be a very motivated person joining the auxiliary. So that's something to consider. If you want them to attend your flotilla meetings, send meeting reminders at least 3 days in advance to the next meeting, so they have advance notice to be there. Obviously, you want to check progress with their paperwork, see if they have any questions or concerns, and try to get a commitment of a date for completing the application process. So here's some kind of fine points on this application. Obviously, you can see where the upper left corner, that is the form 0421. That is the most current version. So always check that when you're looking at this application. Fill in your, the flotilla, or I'm sorry, the district, division, and flotilla number. Working with the downloaded version is really nice. It works you right along, and it will take and forward that information, such as the name, social security number, date of birth, onto successive pages where they're needed. Spouse name, it only needs to be the first name. It does not have to be first or last. Going back to the middle name of the applicant, if they do not have a middle name, then put NMN. That means no middle name. Suffix, that means junior or senior or the second or third. I've had people put in Mr. and Mrs. So suffix is not a prefix. They can get in an occupation code. Zip code, that's a +4. So if they don't provide that to you, you could actually look that up yourself and just kind of write it in on the application. There is websites for that. I put one down here for it. I use this one a lot. It's pretty easy. Down toward the bottom of this page, that other red arrow is the height. This one happens quite a bit, where I'll get, 6 foot 10 inches. I can't even fix that. If there's a way for me to alter it with my pen, I'll do it, but in a lot of cases, I can't. And it has to be inches only. And just funny, I've gotten 2 applications this year where somebody has wrote in something like 67.2 inches. I don't know why they thought we needed decimals of inches, so we needed to fix that. The section 2 and section 3 of page 1 of the application. Just a note here on the skills boxes. You don't need to fill out all 5. If they only put in 2 or 3, that's fine. Or if they don't put any at all, that's okay too. These can always be added later when they update their profile. The boxes are nice when you're using a downloaded version. They're drop-down boxes, so you can just kind of arrow along and select what you want. Emergency contact. I know it says someone not living with you, but I have seen spouses completed here, and it goes through without any issue. But the main point is there has to be someone written in this box. It cannot be blank. I have had one that was not accepted by DIROCS because of that. So we had to get the information forwarded on, and they were able to still process the applicant. Here's the bottom section that flotilla commander will fill out. So obviously you want to make sure all these boxes are checked. You can see the new member exam. You'll have your date, your score, boating safety course. If it's a re-enrollment, you would check that box instead and then put in the previous member ID number. If it's DD 214, you want to check that box. Keep in mind, if they were National Guard only and never were activated into the Army, they will not have a DD 214. They'll have an NGB 22. So you could still check that box and then submit the NGB 22 with the application. Just want you to keep in mind that the flotilla commander signature here is not just signing the completed application. You're actually signing that you are reviewing and making sure everything is complete. So do an extra look on that. I guarantee you, when I get an application package, I'm looking at it 3 times to make sure I didn't miss something before I forward it on to DIROCS. I know this form currently is showing fingerprints, but they're not needed anymore. This is page 2 of the application. This is that section that I talked about, that when you're having an interview with a prospect, these are all good points that you could cover in that interview. Obviously, if they're under 18, we need a parent or guardian signature. And I did have a question on this once, that someone was a guardian, but they didn't have their documentation to prove that they were a guardian. And it's like, my answer was, well, nobody verifies the signature. Sometimes you can't even read the signature, so I wouldn't worry about it. As long as it's signed, we're good. So this is the lower section of page 2. If they've not previously served, then the answer would be no, as a member of the armed forces. If they have, obviously yes. Or I'm sorry, are you currently? If they're current, they won't have a DD 214. I've only had one application come through that way since I've been doing this. Now, if they previously served, yes, they should have a DD 214, unless, as I said, they were National Guard only. And it's funny, on the application, you don't even have a box for previous served for National Guard. It's only currently served do they have that. So that's kind of odd. Be careful of the boxes here. For whatever reason, they offset the square, the checkbox for the U.S. Army. It drops the next line down in front of the U.S. Navy. And I have seen the box marked down there, someone was U.S. Navy. And so that would be the wrong box. The next 3 sections are regarding criminal history. Critical that if they've had some sort of criminal history, that they review and provide the documentation that is asked for here. No matter how minor they think it might be, it's always best to say yes and provide the documentation. I've had one where somebody, 10, 20 years in their past had 2, 3 DUIs, and they submitted the documentation. They wrote a nice letter how their life changed and all the progress they made through education and such since then, and they were accepted as a member. So you never know. It's best to mark it yes and leave it up to DIROCS to make that decision. And again, this would be the applicant's signature, and these signatures are in blue ink, so make sure that it is blue. For those members that don't have a DD 214, I found this website to be very good for obtaining a DD 214, and I've used it for deceased members of my family, and I think it only took 2 weeks or so. In fact, I checked an extra box on my application online, and they actually sent all the ribbons that were received. So that was kind of nice. This section here, you won't put anything in. This is for DIROCS only. We're on to page 3. So it'll be one of the 2 boxes. They are a U.S. citizen, or they're not, or they are a U.S. citizen born in the U.S., or they're a U.S. citizen but not born in the U.S. And then who is looking at the documentation, whether it's the passport or the birth certificate. If you have a fingerprint technician, that's great. You can mark that box and have them put their name down at the bottom. There aren't many fingerprint technicians out there. So in our district, the flotilla commander is the default citizenship verifier. So you would check that box, and the flotilla commander will then put their name and signature at the bottom. So you'd mark the appropriate box. If it's a passport, you mark that box, put in the number, date of issue. If not, you would check the box for the birth certificate. That's about 5 boxes higher up. Question down below that on page 3 regarding prior security clearance. Most cases, this is going to be the second box, have not been issued. It's rare that you'll have anybody who's actually had a security clearance. And that's not the same as a background check. A lot of people have background checks for obtaining various jobs, law enforcement or military, or even in civilian part of the military. But a security clearance means that they're actually going to have access to sensitive or classified or top secret information. And your applicant will know whether they have been in that situation. So they'll really know that best and be able to fill that out if they actually have. So in most cases, it will be have not been issued security clearance. But if they have, then there's the additional pages 6, 8, and 9 to be completed. This is a Privacy Act statement. Make sure that this is covered and read to them. And the box that you would check is on page 1 for this. Page 4. If you do an online version, this is going to be a good time to hit save. And it will have already pre-filled in the name, date of birth, and social security number. So you'd be left at the box for the birthplace. So this can be typed in for the city, the county, the state, and the country. And in most every case, we know that's somewhere in the US. However, we've had some people that are foreign born. And I put the caution there that if you're doing this online and you are in the state and you hit tab to go to the country, it will automatically fill in USA, and you can't get rid of it. So what you would have to do then is just close out of the application, don't save, bring it back up, and it will have all the previous saved information, and do it again. So you would just click in the box of country, and then you can type it in, it works. Or don't fill in anything, and once it's printed out, you can handwrite that in. If they have never had any other legal name, it would be NAs and all these other boxes. If someone was married and they have a maiden name, then that would be their previously legal name you would fill in here with the dates previous and to, or from and to. This will also on the same page free citizenship based on the check mark on page 3, so that will carry through. As far as the mother and father's names, that would be first, middle, and last. First, middle, and last, and first, middle, and last in all 3 boxes. Now, if they've not had a middle name, then you would use NMN for no middle name. And if you have a birth certificate and the applicant, application did not have this filled in, you would find that information on a birth certificate. But if you have a passport, you won't know. So you would then need to call your applicant and ask. This is page 5, lower section. This is the last signature spot for your applicant. Again, blue ink. The other names used is not a legal name. It's like Pat for Patrick or Mike for Michael. It's, what they prefer to be, referred to. It's nothing like a legal name. So I would not worry too much about that. These are copies of the page 6, 8, and 9 if they were needed. Again, your applicant would know this information, and anywhere there's a signature, they would also sign this in blue. Reminder, again, consent to membership form no longer needed. That's a copy of it in case you didn't know what it looked like. So put this in red, review application packets, and then review again before mailing. Take every precaution to make sure you got everything complete and accurate before you put it in the mail to me. What should be included? To whom is a packet sent? That'll be me. Postage materials. I don't know if all of you know that, but you can get the manila envelopes and stamps through your materials officer or your flotilla commander. It's free through the ANSI catalog. So you won't need to use your own money for postage or envelopes. So review, continued here. Application is always to be submitted single-sided, and I have received a few that were, printed on both sides, and had to do a little shuffling and copying, and had to get a page re-signed just so I kind of had originals of everything that was needed. As I mentioned before, be aware of stale dated signatures. So if you're working a long time with an applicant and it's been several months before you finally have a completed packet from them, have them just go ahead and re-sign and date the application. They could sign beside or above their previous signature and date. We currently only need one set of paperwork. I remember some years back, we used to have to send in doubles, 2 sets of paperwork. So we no longer have to do that. So that's good too. So in most cases, you're only going to have 6 pages, and that would be the 5 pages of the application and the citizenship document. We need original signatures on page 1, 2, 5. 3 as well. I'm sorry, that should have been in there. 1 copy of the citizenship verification document, approved voter safety certificate. That's not really needed in the packet. It's sufficient that you reviewed it or took care of that issue and you marked the appropriate box on the application. I also don't need a new member result page. You just fill that out on the application. Again, fingerprint card is no longer needed. Now in Division 20 and 26, the division HRs there would like the application packets sent to them. So if you're in those divisions, send your packets to them first. They are currently reviewing to make sure everything is appropriate before it gets sent to me. At this point, I don't have an issue with that process. If I find it's not working, then I will change it to have you just send it directly to me, as with other divisions. The instructions and skill codes are on pages 10 to 14 of the application, if you need to refer to that. If enrollment applications are completed correct, it currently takes 6 weeks, ? For an applicant to receive their ID number. And we have now gotten to 8 weeks. And if you're not aware, there was an assistant, processor in Dyrox that retired in September. They have not filled that position yet. So I think that has really slowed things down a little bit. Ralph Kugel is doing his best to get things taken care of for our district, but I know it's a heavy workload. And I'm also now receiving emails when the new member gets their ID number. Ralph is copying me on an email that he is sending to these new members. So I also see a copy of their new member certificate. So I know that is getting mailed to them now. And the certificates are sent from Dyrox. It might take 2 weeks given mailing time. I'm not in the loop, so I don't really know, if they actually receive them or not. So hopefully, flotilla commanders or the HR, you guys will stay on top of that when you have a new member and make sure that they got their certificate. If not, let me know, and I will work to get them a certificate sent. When a new member gets their notification that they are a new member and they have their ID number, the flotilla commanders are also copied on that notification. So we are at the end of this training. Just want to remind you that attending this training, make sure that you get your time in, like on a 7029 or an off data 2 using the 99D column. But for the aspect of doing a job for recruiting, interviewing, whether on the phone or in person, assisting with the application, your time for this is recruiting, and you can do a mission report using code 90C for auxiliary recruiting. And that brings us to the end. If you have any questions, here's my contact information.